Hello, Boris Parisham here. I'm going to do the one thing that I'm usually not particularly keen on, which is a channel update. I kind of feel that channel updates usually fall into one of three categories. The first being essentially an advert for something else that you're doing, which I don't like. The second being essentially telling rather than showing, which I don't like either. And lastly, which is what this one is, information that I don't know how to get out in any other way, because I don't have a Space Engineer series anymore. I want one back, and I'm trying. Like, I've been building, this is the third minigame. This is actually a minigame that I've been building with Spider-Man Minty and Anubis. And we've gotten halfway through and it's kind of stagnated because, well, just before Anubis was kicked out of the game because the server sim dropped to 0.02 for some reason. We have no idea why. I just logged back in now to try and record this and had to spend 15 minutes setting it up because for some reason it would crash when I clicked record, or just then I had a weird problem where I couldn't tab out, which was one of the odder things. Like, Space Engineers usually doesn't have any problems like that, but yeah, if something goes wrong, it can. And I have been, like this one. The only way to get a toolbar to be remembered is to save a what is it called? A projection. Not a projection, a blueprint. A blueprint with it. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It's the game's buggy. I think we all know that. But it's buggy to the point where I can't play it. It's not that it's unplayable. We've tried a fair few games in the recent past that are definitely unplayable, and this isn't one of them. But it's at the point, like, for example, I went through and, hang on, why isn't this working? Something's not worked. That's why. I've toggled the timer block off. At least that was my fault. I've kind of looked around YouTube trying to find like other people playing Space Engineers that I hadn't watched before, in order to try and get a little bit of to get a few ideas. It's not something that I usually do. I don't watch videos of games that I also play. I don't know why. I just don't like it. Like, I struggle to watch any other Space Engineers videos. Yes, but I went around and had a look, and pretty much every series across the YouTube of, like, different YouTubers that I've been faintly aware of and that I like, but, you know, there's only so many people that you can follow and watch, so I've not. And going through their videos and just finding that all of their Space Engineer series kind of end in the same way, which is, I like this game, I want to play more of this game, but everything I do, I get to a certain point and I can't. There's always something that's just not quite there, and it's frustrating, because the game is good enough to sort of lull you into loving it and wanting to play more of it just constantly. But then you encounter just one weird problem that stops you doing something, and you think, yeah, that's all right, and then come across another weird problem and it stops you doing another thing. And I don't know how to explain it, because it feels irrational, and I think that it is. Like, why didn't that just pop off? And it's locked on again. Please go off there. And yeah, it's an irrational feeling of frustration, but it's enough to make the game feel like a chore. And I guess it doesn't help that it's an entirely different game with a different heading than what it was when I bought it. When I bought it, it was set in the same universe as Minor Wars, which wasn't a good game at all, and I'll probably get to that later, but I kind of liked the universe. It was odd, but it made it a good setting for the game, which was you were in the solar system, all of the planets for some reason were gone, they all exploded, because that's fun, and there were asteroids scattered everywhere. It was about 2000, like 2080, somewhere around there, and it was basically the human race just trying to survive with what was left, with their engineering skills, and the game was... A lot of that lore wasn't brought into Space Engineers. You can tell how they've shifted by the loading screens, because none of that information are on those loading screens anymore. The little... like the loading... the quotes and stuff like that. They're no longer on the loading screens, because they've shifted focus. And... yeah, they originally... the game was about engineering. It was about building and perhaps, the PvP and all that kind of thing. And that really appealed to me. But now, seeing... like, I watched the live stream that they did for the 2-year anniversary, which is basically one big advert for planets and how good they were. And... pretty much nothing in it appealed to me. I'm not excited for planets. In fact, I would very happily... I remember it was around about October 2014, which is roughly a year ago from when this video was made, if you're watching this in the future. That period was when, if I'm remembering correctly anyway, that period was when Space Engineers was at its most stable. And I would gladly give up all of the extra features that have been put in the game since then in order to just play in a game that's as stable as that. I kind of wish there was a way to go back through versions and just find the most stable one, and then we'll only move forward. Kind of like what you do with a lot of software and indeed other games. You find the stable one, you pick that, play that, or use that. Uh-oh, I think I've just thrown that ball into nothingness because I don't have any gravity barriers up there yet. Yeah, so you pick the most stable and then continue with that one until the better one comes along, but Steam doesn't really let you do that, and there's not really enough archiving of the various different things. Like, you can find versions of Minecraft from pretty much anywhere, for example, but it doesn't really work with Space Engineers. You know what? Pirated copies might. That's a thought. What was I going to say? But yeah, I would gladly give up every feature that they've put in this game, which even the ones that I quite like, in order to just play. Without... There was about 2 days where I thought, I've got it back. I'm happy again with the game. I made 3 half mini games. I got the sort of the concepts like enough for me to just keep plodding along and working on them. But then just coming across little error after little error. There's another one. Those lines. And the fact that they're supposed to be in a bug fixing period at the moment, but as Anubis pointed out, they're not really in a bug fixing period. They're in a we don't want to add any features while we work on planets period, so we'll call it bug fixing, and instead of bug fixing we'll add workarounds to the problems that are quite annoying. And the fact that there are going to be aliens now, that in another game, yeah, but that's not the game that I bought. And again, these are quite irrational problems that I'm having. But it doesn't make them any less real. So I'm struggling to find something to do in Space Engineers. I'm hoping that the event that is happening this weekend, or last weekend, depending on when I edit this video, I'm hoping that will I guess help with this as well. Well, that said, hydrogen has just been introduced, and that's messed with Mir's plans for the map. So after all this, it might not go as well as planned, if at all. I guess you'll know by the time this video's released. But yeah, that's the Survival Games 2 event, and I'm hoping that could spark something again to keep it interesting. To be honest, I don't know how Mir has spent the last 3 weeks pretty much in this game building that map. I mean, with all the time and effort he's put in, I really hope it works out too, because I like that event. I wish I could help him with the map, but that would be against the rules. It's the one event where you can really only have the one person working at that map. The problem with this, I guess, is that I'm more emotional. Like, I haven't been as emotionally attached to a game as Minecraft, which kind of just petered out for me. I still really like it, but, you know, too much. There's just too much. I just burnt out. And I really want this game to be good, and I do have somewhat... You know, it matters, the development for me, because my main hobby, which is making YouTube videos, is very much centered around the game. And having a channel where there isn't at least one Space Engineer series running has meant that I've kind of been at a loss for, I guess, how to structure the channel. I've always had a main series, which used to be on my old channel Minecraft, and now it's Space Engineers. It was the main series, and then I played a smattering of other things around it. And not having that main series just feels odd, and I don't know what to do. I guess we could go back a little bit just to explain my history with YouTubing and other, I guess, creative endeavors. I think it was about 2008 that I started basically writing comedy articles for a website. Someone was stupid enough to start paying me little bits for that. It wasn't much, and well, actually, to start with, he didn't pay me. I was paid in exposure, which at the time I was too naive to understand that was essentially just saying, we want your stuff for free, and we want you to work on it a lot for free. Will you agree to that? And yeah, I was naive enough at the time to say yes, and I quite enjoyed it. I liked it. It was a hobby. I wasn't too fussed about the money side of things, which eventually he did start paying me anyway. But you know, the website fell apart a couple of years later as the owners sort of fought over it. It was nice while it lasted, just writing a couple of joke articles a week. That led into me thinking, well, if they, you know, I much prefer to make radio. I quite like. I've always been a huge fan of BBC Radio 4, for example, all the comedy shows on there, and I started to submit jokes for a show that was on air then. It got to the stage where they too, for a particular show, were accepting submissions. They accepted mine. I got a regular gig there, where I was basically submitting jokes every week, and getting paid, you know, reasonably. It's Radio 4, you don't get paid anything for even the biggest shows, but it was something. But it was still only a hobby. And then, annoyingly, they changed the rules around that time for that show, that they weren't going to accept submissions from basically outside the writers' table, so you had to be there in person, and I wasn't prepared to move halfway around around the globe for a hobby. And then this was crossed over with this. These weren't sort of I ended this and then started this next. They were all sort of crossing over one another. I started one thing before I finished another. So before the radio gig stopped, I started thinking, well, I could make these things as well. They're not going to be as good, but I'll have creative freedom over it, and it should be fun. And started to make podcasts and eventually a vodcast. I made and hosted one smaller one, and I guess you could say devised and wrote for and produced a second one, which got quite popular actually. It was a comedy panel show. I never appeared on that one. I just wrote everything for it. I did all the scripting, all the formatting, devised the show in the first place, booked all the guests, all that kind of thing. And it got just big enough that I was starting to get some sort of very interesting guests on. There was a regular host and 2 regular panelists, and then 2 guest slots, which meant that was actually the hardest thing, and that's always been the hardest thing for me with anything, was filling guest slots, finding people and then getting them to turn up on time in the right place, especially when they're scattered all over the world. And that is still like scheduling. That's the hardest thing of like even what we do now with the NID. But I started to get some guests that I wasn't begging to come on, but they either like knew that the show existed before I asked them. I didn't have to explain that this show existed and would you pretty please be on it. And they were, I even had a couple that asked to be on it, and just got to that stage, but it began to be difficult. And this is the same with everything. Everything has a lifespan, and very few things have, like very few creative endeavors have the luxury of just ending. Quite often they'll peter out, they'll burn out, they'll just slowly disappear. You don't get a grand finale. And this is kind of what happened. The show that I hosted was a little more niche. It was it was a quite niche. It was small. It's what I wanted, and hosting that was a lot of fun. It was a lot less work as well, which meant that I could do about 24 episodes a year for that one, and then about 30. I think we're doing 36 a year for the other one, which was a lot more work. That was essentially what I'm doing now with gaming. Was you'd have full-time work and then an extra, which was about 40 hours, and then an extra about 30 hours on top of hobby, which is pretty much what I'm doing now, except without the work. I'll get to that in a second, maybe. I have no idea how long this has gone. And although it was a hobby for me, and I was happy working like quite hard on a hobby, I've always thought that hobbies are quite important, and I like doing pointless things. Nothing to do with money or success, just for fun. But when the show was there was one like regular panelist who'd stuck with me throughout the entire thing, but the other host and the other panelist had been changing a little bit more regularly on this other show. Not the one that I hosted, but the other one. And I think part of the reason why they were going, it wasn't because they didn't have the time or they didn't want to do it, but I was able to pick up a couple of sort of up-and-coming like stand-up comedians to fill those positions, and they saw the numbers for the show, which for a podcast were podcast numbers tend to be quite low anyway, but they were getting enough views, and it was seen as a sort of first step, as a career move, was to try out this and get the hang of it and see, where you could go from there. And when they realized that they weren't getting super famous from it, then they had to move on and do something else. And that was fair enough. I respected that. I'd asked people who were trying to succeed in like the stand-up game, so I couldn't, tell them that this is my hobby, so it has to be your hobby too. I don't know where I was going with that, but I guess that's where that's why. That's where it kind of petered out, was that I found it difficult then to find regulars as well as guests, and it became a bit too much work. And around that time, I had that also kind of became a vodcast. That was when Google Plus Hangouts on Air became a thing, and we were doing sort of live shows as well as the podcast version, and I was just cutting my teeth in sort of video editing for the first time. I started essentially doing the same panel show, but recording webcams and then editing multi-camera sequences and so forth. And now that I knew how to do video editing, and I'd just seen like Minecraft alpha videos start popping up, and I thought, well, I like playing video games. I hadn't played them for quite a while. Minecraft got me back into it, and I saw that, I started playing Minecraft, and I think it was 3 days after the Minecraft went out of beta was when I released my first video in Minecraft, and it stayed that way. I can't do the maths in my head now. When was Minecraft released? It doesn't matter. I did it for a few years until the end of 2013. End of 2013. Then I had a regular series, pretty much almost entirely in the same world, a single-player series, almost entirely in the same world. Every time things got a little bit laggy, I've talked about this in another video, but every time things got a little bit laggy, I just moved to another chunk. Whenever had like an update was so big that you had to start with a new world, I would world edit quite a few of the structures over, and it was it was a big world. There'd be multiple years of making 1 or 2 episodes a week in it and building constantly. I didn't play as many multiplayer games in those days. I only sort of knew a couple of people. Towards the end, I kind of wanted to start something like what the NID is now, but it wasn't really suitable to it. I think I had around about 8,000 subscribers, I think it was, towards the end of it, and then Minecraft stopped being appealing, and I basically ran into the same problem that I am now, where my main series was gone. I didn't know what to do with Minecraft because I'd run out of ideas, as had pretty much everyone else. That's the same thing. The popularity of Minecraft videos is still big, but they're nowhere near what they were. That's to be expected. That's YouTube in general. The market's been saturated. Demand is now lower than supply. There's so many hacks like me who just throw their stuff up onto YouTube and kind of ruins it for the people that are actually trying to make a living out of it. So, yeah, it's basically just economics. And yeah, I took things a little bit too seriously because you got paid a little bit more then for ads than you do now. So having 8,000 subscribers, and I had a pretty good sort of I forget the actual proper term for this, but like subscribers to views, like looking at my analytics, I had a pretty decent amount of subscribers that would watch every week, whereas some other people would make more general videos and would capture a lot more people through, say, YouTube search, like through a search engine and stuff like that, whereas I had a high number of my regulars returning every week, which meant that I had higher view counts than someone else with the same number of subscribers would normally have. And that would put me in a position, especially when my job at the time was unreliable, and I eventually did lose that one. So I kind of thought, well, other people are making a living out of this, so why don't I? And it was me trying to turn a hobby into a job, and then realizing that Minecraft no longer appealed to me. It kind of pushed me over the edge. I didn't like it anymore, and I kind of left in a bit of a huff and closed that channel. I kind of wish I still had a lot of the videos and that I didn't do it so hastily. Come to think of it, I don't think I have anything left. I have thumbnails and stuff like that left over, but I don't think I have any of the videos left, because I don't and still don't keep any of that stuff locally. Yeah. So that closed down, and then in the meantime I was doing other little things, voiceover work, which has disappeared completely because I've not tried to find any, but I did little bits and pieces of that again for fun. I also made educational videos. That was part of there was another channel who needed help. I did it all for free, but I made sort of educational tutorial videos. The payment was me putting my channel name in, like, my channel link in the description of those videos. So again, it was payment via exposure. Yeah, I got fairly good at making those sort of things, and that's what, I started to fall in love with Space Engineers. I saw this is exactly what I want to do. I learned how to do something and thought, well, it's been a while, let's see if I can still... Oh, I think I just grabbed hold of that again. Let's see if I can still make one. Made a tutorial video. Wasn't particularly good. I don't really like it still. I've left that one up. I've not left up the other 4 tutorial videos. They're all unlisted now. I left the original piston video up because people got annoyed when I suggested that I should take it down. Mostly because I didn't do a very good job with them, but it got very popular very quickly, and then I felt pressure to do more of them. I did them badly, and I basically did the same thing that I did in Minecraft. I really need a barrier that's floating away. But that I did in Minecraft, which was to think that I could do something that I don't like doing in order just to get something so superficial as views, or likes and subscribers and comments and stuff like that. All things that I hate, and I feel dirty already having said them. So I moved into doing things that I liked, rather than doing the more serious videos that I did in Minecraft so often. It was pretty much build for about 8 hours an episode, I think. Build for that time, make something interesting, and then make up an episode out of it. I started to do things that I do like that. I do like watching it, and I do like making it, but I can't do it continuously anymore. So rather than do that, I sort of went back on the other idea of trying to form a little bit of a community just for the fun, and just to see if we can get everyone together to basically do hobbies together. And for it to be less serious, and I could combine the little bits of comedy work in with the gaming, which I've not really done that much of, partially because I'm not very good at the comedy side of things. But yeah, I tried to mold them together, and now here I am with lots of other series. And even though Space Engineers, the main series, is I'm not sure about, I really want to continue, and I want to find a way to work without a main series. Mostly, I want Space Engineers to work. I want to be able to play in it. And, the last I'd heard of what Keen had said, they said that they were going to do the multiplayer update in about 2 months, and I'm not that keen on holding people to dates like, especially in game development or any development really, especially in early access, all that kind of thing. And they said, but they said in about 2 months we'll completely redo the multiplayer code, but that was 6 months ago, and instead they've added something as big as planets, and I've been sitting here for 6 months just stretching things out, just trying to keep it interesting, and just trying to keep having ideas, but I think I've hit the limit of that. So I want to find a way to do not necessarily just YouTube, but creative endeavors in general, without having to have this main series to fall back on. And I don't want to just do the... that's the reason why I don't do like single player Let's Plays through a narrative based story, because like I've tried to do it, but every time I've done it, I've just looked at it, watched it back and thought, this is exactly the same as what everyone else has done. There's nothing special about it. Why put it up? So I haven't. I like sort of multiplayer games where it's the group of it's a group of us, and it's less about the game itself. Come up with some funny things, have a chat. It's basically just friends getting together, and I guess it's a less formal version of a panel show. And I do really like panel shows. I know people in North America probably won't have any idea what a panel show is, but you've got Google. But yeah, in the same way, I get the most popular panel show that's made it to America. It's not really a panel show, but it's close. Is Whose Line Is It Anyway? Where the format is just there to hold things together, just to make it seem a little more legitimate and more fun. And that's kind of what a game is to me. So if you take like our Grid Autosport series at the moment, the racing game, the game has nothing to do with it. It's just a format, something for us to keep our hands busy while we talk, and it gives us an opportunity with different topics being brought up in the game to have different discussions. So we play different games in order to have different discussions. Yeah, so I like multiplayer games like that and want to keep continuing them, but right now that's all I have, and I want something that's a little bit more quality over quantity. So I guess that moves on to my next point, which is that the job that I had, I've had that since the end of 2013. I have lost recently. That was, what was it, 2 weeks ago, I think now? And the reason for it was essentially technological-based redundancy. A computer superseded me. And it leaves me with mixed emotions, because I was the one that suggested and knew about and had the skills to implement a system, like a computer-based system that could do what essentially I was doing. And it wasn't until I left that meeting where I'd suggested that and gone through all the points that I'd sat down and kind of realized I just suggested the thing that's going to make me redundant. And I thought I had about a year longer, because people had already been made redundant through this, which was my fault, but I mean, it was happening inevitably. I'm not a Luddite, so to speak. I do know that it was inevitable. It was going to happen at the system that had replaced me. I know I'm being quite generic here, but I prefer people to not know what I'm actually doing in real life so as to not have any sort of, I guess, prejudicial thoughts to try to categorize who I am based on my job, that kind of thing. So I'm going to be generic. Yeah, I knew that it was going to happen regardless of whether I suggested it. I think I just hurried it up. And because of that, I thought I had about a year longer than I did, as I was in control of the system. Pretty much everyone else had already been made redundant, but I was the one managing all of the software. And they kind of forced me out. They realized that I wasn't entirely needed. They could hire someone on a casual basis to replace me, so they did. And now I'm in a position where I know that the system I implemented is hugely beneficial to the business. It's good. The people who made it are very skilled, and I think I did a good job of implementing it, but it doesn't change the fact that I don't have a job now. But yeah, I knew it was coming, so I've got about 6 months worth of savings. So I'm not like in dire straits yet. The annoying thing is that I also, at the very end, was kind of manipulated into leaving myself, which I really shouldn't have done. That's one thing I hugely regret, because it means I can't apply for sort of government-based assistance, because I was basically not made redundant officially or fired, but I voluntarily left, so there's, at least not immediately. The rules are a little odd, but where I am, that essentially means that I can't claim anything just yet. I don't think I was going to anyway, because it's not worth it, but it's worth it in monetary terms, but not in frustration terms, having to deal with it all. But yeah, I have about 6 months worth of savings. I'm going to spend about 3 months of it being a little less picky, trying to find something that I like, but it's probably not going to work, and that's probably going to be a bad idea. I want to try it though. And so within basically until Christmas, it's the end of October now, so I've got November and December. I'm going to try and come up with some more things to take my mind off of it, and some different creative projects to work on. I would really like to have another panel show again, but I don't think that's really possible at the moment. But yeah, I'd like to try and find some other ways to do more unique, more quality stuff. I say quality like that because there's only so much one can do with a budget of nothing, and sort of limited patience. Like, for example, I just made a UHC highlights video, which I'm quite proud of. I like the video. I wish I could make lots of them like that, but it took me 13 hours straight to do that one video, which is fine if that was what I did all the time. You know, I released maybe 2 videos of that level like I used to per week, but I guess I'm making a lot more fun videos rather than, you know, 2 serious but very well thought out videos. So I'd have to find a way to kind of limit that. Making the NID podcast is fun. I edit that. Mia has taken that over now, so hopefully that'll be within the next couple of weeks. That's going to be one of the things that I'm going to fill my time with. But yeah, essentially I'm on a countdown, and then after Christmas I guess I just have to take what I can find, which is pretty much nothing in the town that I'm living in, which I'm living in because, you know, it's my hometown. It's where my family is, where my friends are. But I get the feeling I'm going to have to move Minty's way. Minty's in the nearest big city, I guess, that's closest to me. I may end up having to move that way in order to find work. I hope not, because I like being here, but yeah, essentially this is why I have hobbies, because my life has always been like this, stressful and kind of crap, and so I do hobbies and that kind of thing to fill my time and have fun with it. So yeah, I think that's what this video is about. I think I've just worked it out, so that I'm going to spend the next 2 months hoping Space Engineers is going to work, but otherwise not doing terribly much in it. I'm going to try and focus, I guess, a little bit more on the NID, make some things for people to do, because I realize I've kind of been focused on the NID tubers and making YouTube videos and less about the community as a whole. So I'd like to do a little bit more work and relieve Mir from a lot of the duties that he's fulfilled in the last, well, 6 months or so, really. And hopefully come up with something new, something, yeah, it might not be just a game, but yeah, I something new. And then if I haven't come up with something by December, then it's time to panic and work out what the hell's going to happen and how am I going to get any money, because I'm then on a countdown for about another 3 months, 4 if I'm lucky, and don't buy too many games before money runs out and I have nothing. Yeah. So, this has been a pretty down episode, hasn't it? This is why I don't do channel updates, because it's usually just me listing all the things that I wish I could do but can't. But at least I found out what this video is about, so I hope the extra candor in this hasn't turned you off. I know that like over the past year, in terms of subscribers, I've pretty much, I've gained about 1,000 but lost about 1,000 at the same time. So I pretty much have, well, I must have roughly an entirely different bunch of people watching my videos to what they were when I first put out a couple of tutorial videos, more or less for fun, and then that got out of hand. Yeah, but at this point, without Space Engineers, I've realized my subscriber count dropping, and I'm not too fussed about numbers. I never have been, and unless I'm looking to actually do something that requires money in order to keep it running, I'm never particularly interested in how many people are actually watching what I'm doing. But I guess it is just the fact that I'm currently on a negative trend for subscribers, I guess, means that what I'm doing isn't worth taking time out of someone's life to watch. And I would like to making videos that people will take time out of their life to watch, even if it's only 5 or 10 people. That makes the hobby more interesting. It makes it more fun. So yeah, basically the 3 things that I said before and what I'm doing now probably won't suffice if I'm trying to continue this for a longer period of time. Right. So I'm sorry if you watch this video and unsubscribe because of it. I have now made you feel immensely less positive about the outlook of humanity. Right, I'm going to end there. I'm great at this. Goodbye. Oh, and great. Now, the game's not letting me stop recording. Thanks, Space Engineers.